It's great to see everyone. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We host these every single Thursday throughout the academic school year as a space for Montessori leaders to come together, to hear from thought leaders, and to discuss various leadership topics. It's a space where you can ask questions, learn, and just connect with one another, because we know that when you're leading a school, sometimes it's difficult to talk about the bigger school leadership things with our staff because we're the ones on top. So it's just good to have a safe space online. These are always free to join, so feel welcome to invite your fellow Montessorians on. They're also recorded, and all of the recordings are posted on our YouTube channel. So if you want to reference them later, or if you miss one and you want to watch it, you can always go on our Nido Marketing YouTube channel to watch them. This week, we're joined by Rupali Sharma, who is the founder of the tech schools in Worcester, Massachusetts. She's passionate about education and started tech schools, and also she assists several school leaders. She also trained as an architect, which taught her to look at the bigger picture when it comes to big projects. She applies all of her techniques in business management as well. She's come to several of our town halls before and shared her wisdom with us, and given some great workshops with us already. So we're really happy to have her back. Today, she's here to talk about developing a child's moral compass. She's put together a wonderful presentation and workshop, and she also let us know that her workshop is interactive, so be prepared to jump in and learn all together. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Rupali now, so she can go ahead and present.
Hello, everybody. I want to just ask everyone, other than just the academics at your school, what are some of the values that are important to you and to your students? What do you share with your students? What's important at your school? Would anyone like to share?
You can drop it in the chat as well. The empathy, kindness.
Thank you, Camilla, for reading them out, because I haven't got my chat open yet. So empathy, kindness, the whole idea, is that children, when they're at school, it's not just about reading, writing, math, history, geography, science, right? They're going to get these skills. But what makes them a good citizen of the world? What makes them part of the social fabric that they are going to grow up in? Those are some of the skills that we talk about in our Montessori grace and courtesy lessons. Now, having said that, we still, even 150 years after Maria Montessori wrote about how she envisioned peace, we still have a war going on. We still live in a society where children and people are not treated equally. So I'd like to go back to this architect, Buckminster Fuller. I don't know if you've heard about him, but he also talked about Montessori education back in the 50s. His idea is that every child is a genius, that all human beings have a potential, that if we all work towards our own highest potential, then there's nothing really to stop us from making the earth a great place. He called the earth a spaceship. He said, we are back in the 50s when the spaceship program was first starting with NASA. He was the architect who said, look, we are already on a spaceship. We are on spaceship Earth, and we are all one humanity. So if we look at the land mass, then the land shows that, traveling on land is not easy, and people are divided by the geographical features. But if you go on water, the water is all connected. All oceans are connected. So now if you look at the entire Earth from space, we are all one people. And so if you look at how are we going to navigate through this spaceship, how are we going to work together in this environment while we have that little tiny span of our life, it's really important to be able to work with each other. It's important to be able to value what we have. And so today I'm going to talk about not all who wander are lost, developing your child's moral compass. That with that compass, the child will always do the right thing. And our goal is that there's no other person telling children, or as they become adults, nobody else is telling them what's right, what's wrong, but they have an internal compass that tells them what's right and wrong. And we will all be in good hands if these children grow up to be our future citizens. So, what is a human being? In Maria Montessori's book, The Formation of Man, she talks about man, the unknown, man, the worker, the wanderer. And we are all on our own journeys, whether we are adults or we are, in our own plane of development, in our continuum, we are thinking about, what is our journey? And through this journey, we are discovering ourselves. We are discovering our own human potential. So I like to say, if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple. If you plant a tulip bulb, you're going to get a tulip. But with a child, with a human child, you don't know what that child is going to become. It's going to become an adult human being, but with what potential? The big differences in our mind, that how we apply our mind. So Maria Montessori talks about the adult and the child in the environment. And the adult is not the same as the child. The child thinks differently. The child's journey is different from that of an adult. I really like when she says, the child is learning to live its life. Unlike the adult is on their way out, but the child is on its way in. So how does the child fit in? That is a big question in the elementary, middle school years. So how do I fit in? Who am I? What is my purpose? In his book, Tolkien wrote, when he wrote this line, not all who wander are lost. He didn't send his characters on unknown journeys. They chose those quests knowing fully well what their purpose in life was. So it's not just wandering aimlessly, but wandering with a purpose. We are all adventurers. We all want to see what's out there. What can we do to make this world a better place? So the feedback that we get is from our environment. There's constant input, and then we manifest that input into some of our actions. So those are, conscious breaking in and breaking out from our environment. And while you're doing this, throughout the different planes of development, as children are getting to the adulthood stage, they are making their own decisions right from a very small infant to the adulthood. We're constantly making choices. And how should those choices take us towards our goal and not take us away from the goal is the whole idea of developing the child's moral compass. And can we do this in our curriculum? Can we integrate it and make it a part of the curriculum so that it's at the forefront of everything that we do? That it's not just, we're going to do grace and courtesy, but not talk about it later if, outside school. It has to become a part of them. So how do we make that through the curriculum? So those are some of the things I'm going to talk about as we discuss the adventure of the child, a purposeful life, and how we can have them be independent in their journey. So this statue of David by Michelangelo is one of my favorites. You can see, David was a young boy, and when he comes across Goliath, the first thing he's doing is he's thinking. And you can see that in his eyes. You can see that he is clearly making decisions. You can see that on his forehead. You can see with the look on his face that he's contemplating his actions. That is a gift that human beings have. We can think, we can extrapolate, we can take a lot of sensory input from our environment and make it into an abstract idea to take an action. We see this on a day-to-day basis in our classroom. We see this with, when we give them manipulatives to work with, we see the children making the leap from the concrete to the abstract over time. Now, in terms of moral behavior, moral conduct, those are ideas that they cannot really touch or feel, but they have to practice on a day-to-day basis. We are able to use our hands and our bodies to do the work that's required. And a big part that humans can do is they can imagine. And Maria Montessori talks about imagination. Einstein talks about how imagination can take you from point A, like your learning can take you from point A to B, but imagination can take you everywhere and anywhere. So throughout history, we see whether it was Copernicus's idea of the Earth not being stationary and all this world, all the sun and other planets are making their show for the Earth while the Earth is standing still. He was able to make that leap of imagination by observation. He observed what was happening in the sky. He observed that the planets are moving. And well, guess what? Maybe we are one of those planets and we are not the center of the universe. And perhaps we are moving around the sun the same way the other planets are doing. But that, it was a brand new idea 500 years ago. It wasn't that he had anything before him to work on that. He had to use his imagination to say, here are my observations. Based on this reality, this is what I imagine. That is the gift of the human mind. And throughout civilization, we see that we've used our ability to imagine and create our own environment. I love the Montessori curriculum because we take a deep dive into history and we look at the whole humanity from a holistic perspective. Children in elementary years study ancient civilization. They see how humans have created their environment. They've also seen how humans have destroyed their civilizations. They've also seen how we have the capacity to do good, but we also have the capacity to inflict harm on each other. So then, if we have these two diametrically opposite capabilities, what does it mean to be human? What is the child going to do as they grow up? I mean, you probably see this in your classrooms too, playing out in a microcosm. Do children have conflicts? And then how do they resolve those conflicts? What can we do with the human potential that we have? So here we see the two capabilities of children. We see a child at work. They can work tirelessly. They love to work with their hands. The more work they do, the more satisfied they feel. And on the other side, you see the child as an adventurer, going out and about, looking at, taking in information from their environment. These experiences are very helpful for children to say, okay, how does the world work? What can I do to contribute to this world? How can I tinker with the tools that I have to create an environment that I like? And so constantly this information is breaking into the child and breaking out from the child through their actions. So giving them a rich environment to work, giving them experiences on a day-to-day basis where they can experience work, they can experience interaction, they can experience participation, helps them develop that moral sense. I mentioned before that the journey of a child is different from the journey of an adult. Now, I want to share these two paintings by Thomas Cole. He actually made as a series of 4 paintings, and the paintings are called The Voyage of Life. There are the 4 stages. There's the childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age. I'd just like to take a few minutes and see what you observe in this painting. And we can make this part interactive. You can either share in comments, or you can unmute yourself and share what you see. What strikes you in this painting? This painting is about childhood. What do you notice here that comes across as something interesting or confusing?
There is a large world outside to explore.
Yeah, there's a large world to explore. That's true. And how is that world? The large world. What do you see in that large world?
Full of beauty.
Yes, the colors are so vibrant, right? What else do you notice? Where is the child?
See the right and the what is it? Is it a boat or what? Right there is this child standing.
Yeah, it's a boat. And what is the child guided by?
It, I would say. Or I mean,
Who's guiding the child? It's the spirit within the child, right? It's so close to the child. And you can see this angel right behind the child. I show this painting to our students, and here you see this child all excited. You can see this infant with arms raised, ready to go at life, full, vibrant. It's the colors, the environment is rich with life. There's plants and flowers and animals and fruits. And I love the painting because it's this child is taking his journey over water. And I love the metaphor of the water because you're really flowing through life. You're bound to come across obstacles. You're going to have to cut your path through it. You have to make your way around those obstacles. But look at the child. The child is going at it with full enthusiasm. And there behind the child, you see these dark mountains, huge mountains. There is so much in the world. There's so much in the universe. It's an expansive environment that we are born in. And here is the child going at it with full force. I'm not going to share all 4 paintings because our work is focused on the child at this age and the child in the age of youth. But if you look at the adult painting, it's rather dark and quite twisted and naughty in the formation of the trees. But it shows, how our journey through life is. So it's so important to know that the child is in a very different plane of development than the adult in the classroom is. And so to not bring the adult prejudices into your curriculum is a very important part. Whatever is happening in the media, whatever is happening on social media, whatever is happening in politics, the child doesn't have anything to do with it. They are just ready to experience life as it comes to them for the very first time. Now, here is the voyage of life at the youth stage. And what do you notice here? Any
steering their own boat.
Steering their own boat, absolutely. You can see the angel is a little away, not too far away, but they're guiding. But you see the arm is still outstretched, still going at life. What else do you notice? What about the landscape? What has changed in the landscape?
I think it's opened out a lot.
Yeah. And you can see, there is the form, the natural forms are there, but in the very back, you can see the imaginary forms that the youth is forming in their own imagination, that they can create something based on the reality of the world that they are living in, right? And that's powerful. That's really, and still the colors are very vibrant. Still there's, the water is steady, and still there's the stability of life in youth. There's the stability of life in childhood. The environment is vibrant. The plants that we saw were more in childhood, they were more on the ground, are now larger trees. There's more to explore. There are these widening horizons. All of this is there for the child for the taking. How are we going to set our children on these adventures, on these journeys, if they don't have a grounded moral compass? So Maria Montessori says, moral education is the source of that spiritual equilibrium on which everything else depends, and which may be compared to that physical equilibrium or sense of balance, without which it is impossible to stand upright or to move into any other position. Let's read this one more time. Moral education is the source of that spiritual equilibrium. Let's think about spiritual equilibrium. That's such an important phrase. It's not about reading, writing, math, but for the child to know, here is all the information that's coming through textbooks, through my work, through my observations. I have to do something with it. And now the child's internal voice has to start speaking. So developing that spiritual equilibrium, she's not talking about religion. She's not talking about what is a prescribed method, but she's saying the child, you saw how the children at a young age, they have that spirit so close to their heart. Whereas as we get older, we move away from the spirit because we are covered with all these external things. And for us, it's a process of eliminating. We have to subtract, we have to remove those layers, like peeling an onion, to go back to our spirit. But for a child, it's there. And for them, it's more of saying, okay, what choices are you going to make? So based on those choices, everything else depends. And you can compare that spiritual equilibrium to the physical equilibrium because we can actually see it. We can see the child in the toddler age group. We can see them trying to make their balance. We see how they're learning their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. But a lot of that balance is also happening in their brains, which we can't see. And it's important to train the mind to think about what is possible. And the way Maria Montessori shares what is possible is by showing children the highest possible things that humans have created, whether it is through arts, through literature, through math. You look at the Montessori materials, they go above and beyond just addition facts or just subtraction facts. You're looking at patterns, you're looking at discoveries that some of the ancient mathematicians have made, ancient scientists have made. And it allows also for space for the child to make their own observations and their own leaps. So I was asking my students, actually, while I was preparing for the workshop, one of my students had come into my office and I said, why don't you help me with this workshop? And I said, why do you think we need moral compass? We use the moral compass term in our school all the time. And he said, well, if I just know reading and writing, that's not enough. I would be like a robot. I would repeat things over and over again. And if you've used Chat GPT or artificial intelligence, you can see that it's taking information from a lot of data and it's creating meaningful sentences, writing papers for you. But sometimes it's not even authentic. My husband uses it for his marketing campaign, and some of the things that ChatGPT will come up with is very well written, grammatically correct. But if you don't know what's right, the information may not always be accurate. It depends on what data it was fed. So you would repeat things over and over again. And then Marcelo, my student, goes on to say, I wouldn't know, what to do with the information. I would just go about babbling. But if I'm capable, and I know that other children in our school are capable of different things, I can see what other people do and I can help myself do things that are the right decisions. And he says, it's the inner part of the brain. I said, so where do you know that what is the right thing? Where does it come from? And he says, somewhere in my brain. And so we pulled out the model of the brain and we said, where in the brain is it? Is it the frontal cortex? Is it the cerebellum? Is it the amygdala? Where is this information happening? But it's all those processes that are happening inside your brain. You can't put a finger on it, but it's part of training your mind to think about decisions. And he says, plain thinking skills cannot do that. Nothing else can do that, but you have to know what is the right thing. And without thinking, you would just go babbling in the world. So that's my sixth grader talking about, the moral compass. So we are all familiar with this plane of developments chart, and we know that, in the 0 to 6 years, the child is really, really dependent, very helpless, especially in its infancy, that it cannot even do anything without an adult. But their brain is developing at the fastest rate. And so what are the experiences we are giving the child to build that independence, to allow them to think, by not, even for the youngest child in the family or in our schools, allowing them the time, not rushing them, allowing them to think for themselves, to make those choices. We have a 2-year-old, and I was really fascinated to see that, she would look at the teacher or at some of the other students in the classroom, knowing fully well that she was making the wrong choice, but she was testing the limits. And so where are those boundaries for the children that they can test? What is permissible, what's not acceptable? Giving those experiences at a young age in a nurturing manner are important. Now, as the child gets into the next phase of development, the plane of development of 6 to 9 years, they're thinking about, okay, now I know how to walk and talk. I know what to do. I can start learning to read. I can do my math. This is the age when they need to know their basics, all fundamental skills, grammar skills, mathematics, reading, writing. If they can have those tools, they are confident. And so the academic part does play an important role in the development of children feeling confident about themselves. Maria Montessori, in every literature that she's written, she talks about the importance of work, that a child who's at work is the most satisfied child. So if a child is upset or crying, is in conflict, what is the work that they're not doing? What is the unmet need that they have? And so giving them the opportunity to do large work in the elementary years is important. Now we look at where am I going from here? The cosmic education in the elementary years really addresses these questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? And even though in the third plane of development, where our adolescent students are able to do their reading, writing, math, they know their skills, now is the time to go out and about in the community and participate in real life situations. So the farm school is a great idea. Now we are based in a city, so we don't have the luxury of a farm school, but we have partnerships with community businesses. So we work with various community organizations in the city where our adolescent children can participate and give back. So they're testing. This is a great time to test their limits in the society. And then as they grow up into their fourth plane of development, they are learning to take those skills that they have and actually participate in a workforce, whether it's internships or in their college communities, the university, where they can really pursue their own interests and passion. So that leads us to saying, okay, if that's our goal, that we want these independent adults by the time they're 23, 25 years old, then where does it start? It starts, all of us as Montessorians know it, it starts at the very young age. And it really starts with the word respect. And Maria Montessori says every child is an individual who must be respected. Through education, children develop character. So that is an important link. How does the education develop character? As Marcelo, our sixth grader, was saying, he observes what other people do. Role models in the school are all the adults. Right from the top, it really starts, that culture starts from the top. And how you treat your teachers, how you treat your the parents at your school, the various members who take care of your school, how you model that behavior, bring it down to actual practice in the classroom. The teachers are then, or the administrators at every level, they are the people who are interacting, and children are observing. They're taking it all in, good and the bad. And so just being aware and mindful every single time and being present in the moment to say, this is the right behavior. The more they see that, the more it becomes a part of them. And so the prepared environment is not just in the classroom, but in everything that the adults are doing around the children at every single time that they're there. And so when students find people who inspire them in their daily life, they know that these things are possible. They can then emulate them and become like those adults. So how do you now bring this into your curriculum? At our school, I'm going to just talk about how we've integrated moral development in our school. Grace and courtesy is a big part of the curriculum for all Montessori schools. So what we've done is within Grace and Courtesy curriculum, we have a moral compass curriculum. We have 6 core values that we believe in. We talked about respecting themselves first, and then respecting people around them, their materials, the animals, the plants. We are part of a church. And so although we are not a religious school, we rent the space from a church. And so how do we interact with the community that's around us? We go to the art museum for our art classes. And so how do you conduct yourself outside? How do you respect the patrons who are at the art museum? We go to a local park down the street. So how do you conduct yourself when you're out and about in the city? All of that comes down to respect. Seek truth. There is so much noise outside. We as adults know that. It's newspapers, television, social media. And now with COVID, I don't know about your schools, but I notice here and on our online school with students in Asia, we notice that children are very much now familiar with digital tools and digital platforms. So they are out there where the world is not visible to them. Things are happening behind the screen. And so how are they able to seek truth and not just follow what's popular? Strive for excellence. What's penmanship? What's craftsmanship? Teaching children to do better than what they are doing. Achieve balance. We talked about equilibrium earlier. Often our teachers say that achieve balance is not a straight line. And we know this as adults, that it's always you're shifting the balance. It's more like a dance between yin and yang. And then living with dignity and integrity goes back to seeking truth. Can people trust you? Can you keep your word? And at the end of the day, you want a child to be joyful. You want yourself to be joyful. You don't want to go home thinking, another day is done and I just can't wait to go sleep. But more like, wow, I've accomplished this today. I look forward to coming back tomorrow. So those are the core values of our school. Every year at the beginning of the school year in September, teachers spend a lot of time doing community meetings in the classroom. And they say, so here we are, we're going to have this school year, we're going to be together. What rules should we follow? So the children actually come up with the rules themselves, and we have our class constitution. They then form committees to write the rules, to decorate their class constitution. This year, one of the rooms is called a forest room, and they made their class constitution with leaves and sticks that they found outside. They wrote the rules on bark of a birch tree. And so they can be as creative as they want, and they work together. So now they are talking to each other, they are collaborating, there are conflicts, they're resolving the conflicts. All of that is happening in that activity itself. And then this becomes a living document that stays in the classroom for the entire year. So when there's a conflict, they actually go back to this document. So again, going back to, as children become aware of their place in the universe, their place in society, they are just following their natural instinct. They are following their human tendencies, as Maria Montessori would say. So giving them these daily experiences in the classroom for them to collaborate, for them to talk to each other, to resolve conflicts, helps them get closer to being aware of what's right and what's wrong. The other areas that you can bring this grace and courtesy through many different areas, but literature, the arts, reading classical literature, whether we study 2 continents every year, and we bring classical literature from different cultures, because those are pieces of literature that have stood the test of time. These are before our living memory, and the writers have lived before us. They've seen things that are human principles, just principles, how the world works. And those principles, if you look at the fundamental needs of humans, those principles don't change from time to time or from culture to culture. Maria Montessori was able to teach in India. She was able to teach in Amsterdam. She was able to teach in Italy. And she said, it doesn't matter where the child is from. Their needs are the same. Their tendencies are the same. So while she was in India, the children read in Sanskrit, in Hindi, in Tamil. When she was in Italy, children read in Italian. And, they were all able to do deep work based on the literature that they had. But the point about pop culture and books that are current, they haven't yet stood the test of time. Occasionally you'll come across a good book, a good poem, but really the values that the literature teaches is uplifting. And remember those two paintings we saw? Uplifting. That's the child. That the adult is usually not there, but the child is always in those two realms of, wow, every day is a new experience. And then Maria Montessori, she does a great job in the curriculum with giving the historic perspective. So give them the whole breadth and width of the topic you're going to talk, because they go from the whole to the parts. They don't have to fit in those puzzle pieces. And by looking at something holistic, they're thinking in a holistic manner. Grace and courtesy throughout the day. Here's a young child who was walking in the hallway with his shoelaces undone. He couldn't tie his shoelaces. And so here's an upper elementary student who was passing by, just stopped the other child, said, hey, let me do this for you. And he taught him how to tie shoelaces. So again, yes, this child is getting his lessons with the lacing frames in the classroom, but here's things that happen naturally. Just we talked about modeling, the role of children observing and then modeling it for younger students, and then creating their own actions based on what's right. So Walt Whitman, he wrote this poem. There was a child who went forth every day. And if you haven't read this poem, I would suggest that you read this poem. It's like everyday experiences that the child is taking in and taking in and making those experiences their own. Every child is going to look at the environment in their own way. They're going to take in things from that environment, what appeals to them, and then they're going to create something magical from their experience. No two children will do the same thing. And so here is the child. Their journey is to go forth every day with this awe about the universe, about the world that they live in. And so for preparing that environment, giving them those opportunities is important on a day-to-day basis. We take our students for a walk. This is a park like just down the road. And it's great that in a city, we can go to a nice park and do our nature walks. We can do science, the literature. So classroom teachers will often take their books out and they'll read under a tree. But giving them this grand view of your environment is important. Those spontaneous activities that children come up with, giving them time to explore those interests will then allow them to follow their own natural development. So to say that in terms of what is our role as human beings, we are creating our own lives. We are creating our own destiny, so to say. And so Maria Montessori says, man is a sculptor of himself. Every day you're chipping away at your own being. Man is a sculptor of himself, urged by a mysterious inner force to the attainment of an ideal determined form. So there is the human potential. That is the determined form. We are all capable. Our children are all capable. So how on a day-to-day basis are we going to take them towards that potential? How are we going to allow them to sculpt their own lives? What tools are we going to give them? What guidelines are we going to give them? That is our role as adults in developing their moral compass. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. And I want to take some time to open the floor for any observations, your thoughts, questions, and answers. Thank you.
Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can also just drop your comments, questions, ideas in the chat, and I'll read them out.
Rupali, I have a question.
Sure.
Basically, I'm not on campus all the time. I'm basically more in the background in terms of managing the school. But occasionally when I go to our elementary program, particularly when I notice some of the children in the upper elementary program, I find that many of them are fairly rambunctious. They don't seem to, have that empathy that I was expecting, that if they have gone through the primary and all that stuff, they should have had by now. So I'm just curious, what do you think may have gone wrong in the process? Is the teacher not emulating all these things, or they're not focusing on certain things? I'm not in a position to judge how qualified the teacher is in the classroom, but I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are, where things go wrong, because when you look at the philosophy of what Maria Montessori is saying and what you have talked about, boy, these upper elementary children should be just amazingly super polite, kind children, right? But you don't see that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just wanted to get your perspective in terms of.
That is a very good observation. Last year, I remember our upper elementary teacher, she came and she said, we are doing, I'm teaching them all these things. And yet, the moment I turn my back, they're like back to doing their own thing. And it's like whack-a-mole, because you're trying to keep everybody in order. And that's really not Montessori. What is going on? And so she brought this question to our staff meeting, and our lower elementary teacher, she said, let's look at the environment. Are they using Montessori materials? And a lot had to do with just going in and changing the environment. So the lower elementary teacher and the upper elementary teacher, they got together in the evening and they just changed the classroom layout. They also made, the upper elementary teacher made sure that she was using more materials in the classroom and not workbooks and not, just black lines to kind of push for work to be done. So bringing in real meaningful work. She also started doing observations, what time is sunrise, what time is sunset, what patterns do you see, what are the phases of the moon? So that became like a daily activity in the classroom. And by just tweaking the environment and by giving them projects that were large in scope, she was able to change the culture in the classroom. Because if you see the role of the upper elementary student, most students know how to read, write, do their math. You really have to take them to the next level in thinking. One of the things she did was she started teaching them patterns in math, and she started doing Pascal's triangles, Fibonacci sequence. They started looking at numbers in binary form, Roman numerals. So just taking the numbers that they know, but giving them a bigger idea and telling them stories. So teaching them through stories, she changed that. So there are some things you can do creatively where you can meet with the teachers, and it might be helpful for maybe the children's house teachers or the lower elementary teachers to observe in upper elementary and see what's going on, and they might have some insights to share.
Do you feel that in upper elementary, there should be time taken to reinforce grace and courtesy on a regular basis? Maybe some teachers are not doing that.
So I don't know the curriculum in your school, but at our school, grace and courtesy is required to be taught throughout all classrooms. So every Monday, the upper elementary teacher, she talks about one core value from our school's moral compass, or she'll take something that they've written in their class constitution. Like one of the things that the students wrote in the upper elementary class constitution is have a growth mindset. And she says, all right, what is the growth mindset? What does that mean? How is your mind going to grow? And so it gives the children an opportunity to start thinking and reflecting. And then on Monday, she'll say to them, I want you to think about one value that you're going to practice this week. And at the end of the week, on Friday during Circle, they close the week with saying, all right, how did we do on this value? More like how Benjamin Franklin had his checklist of values and how he kept track. She has doesn't have a checklist, but she does have time for students to reflect. At the end of the day, they often talk about, how was my day? Even sometimes she'll do it just before recess or lunch. She'll say, let's look at your morning. How do you feel? What's one word you can use to describe your morning? And it's often, sometimes children will say, oh, I was productive, I felt accomplished, I felt satisfied. Sometimes they'll say, I was unproductive. And then now there's a chance for the teacher to say why and go in and understand what's going on for that child. So giving them time to reflect on a regular basis, giving them time to think about moral values, that it's not something you learned in Children's House, and the order and discipline that you had in Children's House has to be carried throughout. There is a misconception in upper elementary that children don't have the same, they're not in the same sensitive period for order and discipline that they are in Children's House. And so sometimes the teachers don't have their environment in the same order that Children's House teachers have their environment in. So take a look at the environment. Are the shelves being cleaned and dusted? Are the materials covered with dust, or are those children really taking care? Do they have pride in those materials? Is the environment cluttered? You might be surprised by just, spending some time observing in the classroom to see what's going on. I don't know if that answers your question, Wali.
No, it does. I mean, I basically, many of the things that you brought up, I think they're worth looking into. And I do not know enough. I mean, whether or not, when I step into the upper elementary classroom, I find, or some classrooms, that the environment be somewhat cluttered. But I don't have, for me, being not an academician from Montessori, to judge whether or not it's the right amount or less amount and all, but I just notice just off the bat. And the few things that I noticed that you mentioned, but I have not really brought anything up per se, but it just kind of surprises me because I had different expectation. When I go to elementary campus, I feel that I've been noticing something different. All the carryover from 3 to 6 and all that will continue the same way. And of course, I think at upper elementary, they're reaching a different stage, right? Where there's some camaraderie, the cliques and this and that begin to start. So I think a teacher probably has to manage that. That's not an easy job either.
Yeah. The thing is, you don't want to lose what the children have learned in Children's House. You want that to continue in their adulthood. So I've often heard, where teachers have said to me, well, they're in just a different stage of development and they don't need the same order. So that's what I would say. Mary, thank you for your comment. I'm glad that you could take some things away from this conversation. And then Sean says, any ideas on ways of teaching, encouraging these qualities? We had a parent, she used to come in and lead on moral attributes. Yeah, I think making the moral values a part of your conversation, maybe starting with your staff, like what are the values that they bring, if they value something, they're going to bring them to their students. And what are the values? I think maybe we can start with that in the staff meeting, is what are the values that you hold dear? Because, you know, Montessori teachers don't just come to a Montessori school looking for a job, right? They come for more than that. There's a passion, there's a reason. So what is their reason? And are they fulfilling their purpose at your school? And if they are fulfilling it, can they bring it to their students? Maybe a workshop within your staff members might be a good idea to say, how can we teach these qualities to our students? I think bringing it to the forefront on a day-to-day basis is the key. It's not that you just do it as a lesson in Children's House and it's done.
Any other questions or comments before we wrap up? I think it's been a really great presentation. So thank you so much, Rupali, for sharing your wisdom and sharing such a great workshop with us.
Thank you.
And thank you to all those who asked questions as well. Next week, we're going to be having a town hall all about working through parent conflicts in your school community. It's going to be led by Joanne Shango. She's joining us as our speaker. So keep an eye out for that. The registration will be free. You can use the same link, the town hall link that you used to register for this. Just sign up for the March 9th meeting. We look forward to seeing you there. This recording will be posted in our YouTube channel. I'll also share it with Rupali. She shared her email in the chat here, so if you want to reach out to her with any follow-up questions, you can do that as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Rupali, for your presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, everyone,
Bye,
have a great
everybody. Good
Thursday.
luck.
Thank you.
Bye.